We found archaeology ranging from Mesolithic period up to the medieval period. A little bit of background information about the site. Between the years 2013 and 2016, we did some excavations underneath these green square buildings you can see on the right-hand side of the picture there. These are bonded warehouses. Before they could be built, we had to go in and deal with the archaeology there, obviously. We found an Iron Age enclosure. We found 23 pits in a sub-angular alignment. We found burnt mounds. We found a ring groove structure, possibly a roundhouse. There were various other pits and post holes there. There was Neolithic pottery recovered from some of the pits and post holes, as well as flints. And the archaeology tended to date to generally the Neolithic up to around about the Iron Age. As well as this, there were the circles that you can see at the bottom of the map there. Those are anaerobic tanks for recycling spent grain into gas, which William Grants does. And before they could be built in 2014, we did the archaeology there, where we found an intense level of prehistoric activity. There were structures, burnt pits, and hearths, as well as pottery, and more flints there as well. And just below that, the dark green field, you can see there's more bonded warehouses that are going to go in there. And we did some archaeology there in 2019, where we found 2 overlapping ring ditches, one of them appearing to date to the Neolithic in age, and one of them looked to be Iron Age. There were various small 4-poster type structures, not sure what they were, as well as numerous other pits and post holes, and some possible evidence for Romano-British activity. Now, in the circle here, you see that's the location of Warehouse 39. So in 2021, we were contracted by McLaughlin and Harvey on behalf of William Grants and Sons to undertake the archaeological excavations there before they could build Warehouse 39. This site had been originally discovered in aerial photographs, which show a number of crop marks. And in the late 1990s, a series of evaluations took place which showed the extent of the moat ditches, and excavation was decided to be put on hold there just because of the cost of digging the moat. So this is an aerial photograph showing the site. This was taken in 1992. You can clearly see in this aerial photograph the southwest corner of the site there of the moated enclosure, as well as a number of other features in and around the moated enclosure. When we started work there, we stripped the site. This is a working site plan, a rough plan of what we found. You can see here on the west and east sides of the site, there was predominantly prehistoric archaeology. There were Mesolithic lithic scatters, particularly on the east side. We found numerous pits and post holes, which some of which were containing possible Neolithic and possible Bronze Age pottery. That was found on both sides of the site. There was a palaeochannel which ran east to west, roughly across the north side of the site. This formed the north side of the moated enclosure. They had used the palaeochannel in digging the moat ditch itself. That was probably to save a bit of time digging that north side, and also to feed the moat with water. The palaeochannel probably accounts for a lot of the activity in this general area, because it would have been attractive and a nice site to use close to water throughout prehistoric times, as well as leading to the west. There's a very nice view of Ailsa Craig from the site. Now, in the middle of that plan, you can see the square-shaped moated enclosure itself. Much of the archaeology within the moated enclosure might have been prehistoric as well. We're not sure. Some of it's definitely medieval. There was a number of ditches, pits, post holes, the normal sort of stuff, which we're not entirely sure what it all was. The moated enclosure was around about 60 meters square. Each side of the moat was around about 60 meters long, and the moat ditches could be up to around 2.5 meters deep. I'm going to pass over to Jordan at this point to tell you a little bit about the prehistoric archaeology at Chapeldonan.
Yeah, So the prehistoric archaeology at Chapeldonan, it was fairly wide-ranging from Mesolithic through Neolithic and into there's a few Bronze Age features on site as well. The site setting, it was in a low-lying valley. It was bounded to the north, south, and east by higher uplands, and this caused water flow through the valley. So there was, as mentioned, there was 2 alluvial channels on site, one major alluvial channel going from east to west, and another running roughly south into the north, and these intersected around about the center of the site. The presence of these alluvial channels has caused quite a large buildup of alluvium, that is water transported to soil, probably through overspilling from these water channels, and this is spread out across quite a large portion of the site. There's a rough date ranges for the prehistoric activity we can see on site. So yeah, there's definitely evidence of intermittent human activity on this site. The earliest prehistoric evidence we have is likely Mesolithic, and it's in the form of some lithic scatters, which my colleague mentioned to the east of the medieval moated enclosure. During the initial strip of the site, it became immediately apparent that there was likely some prehistoric activity on site. We found quite a large concentration of lithics actually within the alluvial channel, so it indicated to us that there was likely Stone Age activity along the banks or upstream of this alluvial channel, of this portion of the alluvial channel. The initial cleaning of the site, it began to reveal that there were 3 concentrations of lithics to the east of the medieval moated enclosure. And the cleaning also revealed we managed to extract a hammerstone in immediate association with a core and several detached flakes. So it became apparent to us that this was actually an in situ lithic site. Lithic sites often having been discovered through ploughing and field walking. In this case, it seemed to have been sealed within the alluvium, the overspill from the alluvial channels. So presents quite a good opportunity to study lithic scatter formation. In order to excavate these, we established grids over each area of concentration, and we excavated each square of that grid in spits and sampled the soil from that 100% for later flotation. So 100% of this grid excavation was sampled and then later floated. That's washing away the soil in order to extract the lithics contained within. The excavating in a grid will hopefully prove useful to the lithic analysis, in that they can perhaps plot distributions of different types of lithic debitage, and hopefully give an idea of how they were reducing and napping the material on this site. Here's a picture of us excavating the grid. Nice sunny day. So yeah, as I mentioned, the flotation of this material has already been done, so it's 100% done. We've actually have the lithic assemblage complete now. There is several thousand fragments. I believe it's about 30,000 separate fragments, and it appears to be flint dominated. I think flint is actually the only material present in the assemblage. The high proportion of debitage in the assemblage, that's chips and flakes and bits that fly off when you're napping the material. And there's also, as I mentioned, the presence of a few hammerstones. And so this is suggesting to us that it's very, very likely a primary napping site. Not very many formal tools, that's tools that have been retouched, some secondary retouch. Not very many of them present in the assemblage. Mostly cores and debitage and small blades. The production of small blades appears to be the dominant motivation at these napping sites. Here's a few pictures of them. That's some of the cores you can see, some single platform cores with characteristic pyramid shaped shape, and a hammerstone there. Another core, and a few of the flakes from the assemblage. And this is not from the assemblage, this is just an example of some narrow blade, late Mesolithic narrow blade technology. So that's in the analysis that we're going at the moment, it seems quite likely that this is a late Mesolithic assemblage, narrow blades being the predominant predominant feature of this assemblage. Likely that these were being produced for the production of composite tools, so perhaps notched into wooden arrow shafts, or perhaps handles for scrapers. There was some possible Neolithic activity in the same general area as the Mesolithic lithic scatters. There was one roughly stone-lined pit, which seems to be of likely Neolithic origin, and again, it lies close to the intersection of the two waterways near the centre of the site. It appears that there's some kind of burning events occurring in this pit. There's a thick, ashy deposit, both present within the pit and also spread around the pit. It appears that this deposit has actually been shoveled out of the pit and deposited slightly downslope of the pit. It's accumulated down the slope. So it seems likely that this feature was being reused quite a lot. There were burning events happening, they were clearing it out and then reusing that pit again. There's two thin channels which seem to extend from the pit. We're not entirely certain about the function of these, but it's quite possible to facilitate airflow into the pit. Around this feature to the immediate east, there's a semicircular formation of post holes. So it seems likely that there was some kind of structure associated with this pit. Unfortunately, we don't have the entire circle of post holes evidenced here, so there might have been some truncation of the site. But from these post holes, we managed to retrieve some prehistoric pottery. It seems likely to be Neolithic, and also some carbonized nutshell as well. So hopefully we can use that to get some idea of the food use in this portion of the site in the Neolithic period. There's a picture of the roughly lined stone pit there. And there was also some sparse possible Bronze Age activity on site as well. There was several ceramic fragments were discovered at the site, and there was not very many structural elements as far as we could see, but there seemed to have been deposits of burnt mound-like material. So that's ashy material intermixed into some heat-cracked stones, possibly a byproduct of heating stones in order to heat water. And we discovered this along the banks of the alluvial channel and also within the alluvium itself. So possible evidence of some kind of heating stone process evident on site as well. I'll hand back to Kenny for the medieval material now.
Thanks very much. I'm just going to quickly run through some of the medieval archaeology that we found at Chapeldonan. This is a view of a part of the moated enclosure interior. You can see that there's lots of pits and post holes and ditches and things in there. As I said earlier, the analysis isn't complete on this, so we don't know exactly what age they're all from, although we do know that some of it is medieval in age. You can see that big pit right in the middle of the picture there. We think that might have been a kiln or a fire pit. This is a photograph of it when it still contained the stones. The big stone in the middle, that big round one, that's actually a broken millstone. And then the edges of the pit were lined with a matching broken millstone in fragments, which was that was quite interesting. The function's not entirely clear. We've been calling it a kiln. It didn't contain any burnt grain. It didn't contain any sort of broken pottery or anything like that. So we're not sure exactly what it was used for, but it did have a lot of charcoal, a lot of heat-affected stones. So there was definitely some kind of burning activity happening in there. This is another interesting stone line feature that was found inside the moated enclosure. It appeared to run into the moat ditch. The south side of the moat ditch is just out of view on the right-hand side of the picture there. It had this interesting stone line circular part on the left-hand side there, and then a sort of linear stone line duct almost that had flagstones along the bottom. It was possibly some kind of a drain or maybe a font or something. We're not entirely sure what that was. This is a photograph of the team excavating in the south side of the moat ditch. The moat itself is where most of the interesting finds came from, and this includes an enormous amount of pottery. The analysis is still ongoing on the pottery, but we know that we have in the region of around 3,000 medieval pot sherds from the moated enclosure at Chapeldonan. Much of it's the typical sort of medieval green glazed gritty ware type pottery that you'd expect to find, white fabric, red fabric, that sort of stuff. But quite a lot of it, such as these faces, is probably quite high status material. These are probably roughly 13th century jugs that these have come from. We also have a number of fragments of pottery, sherds of pottery, like the stuff you see in the left-hand picture there. This is probably imported French material. Again, it was maybe wine jugs, something like that. Again, that suggests something quite high status happening here on the site, as well as this on the right-hand side, something probably domestic again, but it's very, very well decorated, quite high status material again. That's just a few of the different types of pottery that we got from the medieval moat. There was also around 160 pieces of leather were recovered from the moat ditches, as well as most of these were shoes, as well as a possible pouch has been recovered. The preservation of this leather was due to the waterlogged conditions at the base of the moat deposits. It was very waterlogged, so we had very high preservation of organic materials, as well as all the leather, all the shoes. There was a single piece of fabric recovered from the moat deposits. This can be analysed to help determine what kind of fabric it is, possibly give us a rough date, how it was manufactured, what kind of material it was made from, and that will help to give us an idea of the kind of textiles that people might have been using, might have been wearing, who were living in the moated enclosure settlement itself. As well as the leather and textile, we had around 685 pieces of wood preserved in the moat deposits. Many of these were worked to some degree, and quite a few of these were obviously wooden artifacts, such as you can see this shaft or handle on the left-hand image there. The right-hand image is another worked piece of wood. You can see that it's been worked at some point. There's a drill hole through the middle of it. I'm not sure what it is, but it's obviously part of some kind of wooden artifact. As well as these, there were a number of wooden bowls recovered from the bottom of the moat. You can see in these ones there's nice turning marks where it's been carved out, these two different wooden bowls. If you look at the reverse side of them, you can see more of those turning marks. They look very nice there. There's also possibly evidence on the right-hand one for cut marks on the base of the bowl, as though someone had maybe turned it over to cut something on that flat bottom of the wooden bowl. There were also a number of pieces of structural timber. This is the largest one you can see here. It was this large beam, possible slots for mortise joints cut into it. It measured around about 5 meters long. It was about 30 to 40 centimeters wide, about 30 to 40 centimeters deep as well. You can see in the right-hand picture there, the team was ready to try and lift it by hand out of the moat, but we didn't manage. We got it just off the ground and then had to drop it again. And eventually we used a digger came and helped to lift it out with straps. Another interesting wooden feature was these stakes. There was a row of 5 stakes running across the moat ditch down in the southeast corner of the moat. We're not entirely sure what these were, but they were obviously being preserved in situ, whatever they are. They might have been part of a fish trap or something. Not absolutely sure, but they were certainly quite interesting to find, good to excavate. Moving on from the wood, there were approximately 75 metal objects recovered. The most interesting of these including this metal axe. You can see a picture there of it in the ground. and another picture of it quickly starting to deteriorate after it was pulled out of the ground. We're not sure if this is evidence for defensive things happening around the moated enclosure, or maybe it's just for cutting wood. Not sure. Very near the axe head, and within about 10 minutes of the axe head being found, we also found this pewter jug. Again, this is possibly evidence for high status occupants of the moated enclosure. This one's missing its lid, unfortunately, and it didn't have any kind of a coin hoard inside of it or anything like that. However, on the west side of the ditch, we found these 11 coins, or at least pieces of coins. All of them seem to be made out of silver. They were found together. Most of them are Henry III of England, 13th century king, but two of them are of Alexander III of Scotland, Scottish king in the 13th century. These may have been minted locally. There's a mint in Ayr that was producing this kind of coinage, but again, analysis isn't complete yet, so we're not absolutely sure where they came from. Now, medieval moated enclosures are not often excavated in Scotland, so the results from Chapeldonan will hopefully bring to light some of medieval life in southwest Scotland. The analysis, as I've said, still ongoing, so the full results are not yet available, but we hope that you enjoyed seeing some of our initial findings from the fieldwork. We'd also like to thank McLaughlin Harvey and William Grants and Sons, and we'd like to thank you for listening to our presentation. Thank you very much.